And for those that don't know, dithering is that sort of checkerboard pattern that is used to try to create the illusion of smoother gradients of color, or just more colors in general to go around. It's like a low-res pixel art version of what's called dot screening in printing, or cross-hatching in drawing, where you create like crossing lines pattern to create the illusion of shades of gray, for example, if you're drawing with a black pen.
Or even stippling is another.
Yeah, stippling,
the dot
which is,
technique.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the perfect segue into what I want to talk about, which is the use of dithering and how that has changed a lot, and the attitude should have changed, and it has amongst really professional level pixel artists. There's been a shift in pixel art style and an awareness of dithering, and a big part of that comes from the fact that now we're on incredibly crisp LCD screens and not blurry CRT monitors and TVs when we do pixel graphics. And that makes a huge difference. Before, the blurriness of the TVs would hide that dithering a lot. It would automatically blend it together better, and it would look much more convincingly like it was just a smoother gradient of, in this example, more grays to create this cylindrical effect.
Yeah, and even like if you weren't buying like a high-end television or something, or a really huge television back in the day, I mean, most of them they were pretty fuzzy, and they weren't super high contrast either. You know, like you had a cheap TV, that could have even influenced why people felt the need to do such high contrast.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
You know, in the games, it's because the TVs were a little bit washed out.
Right, they intentionally were making it sharper contrast than they would have, because at the end, the TV or the CRT monitor, which was similar technology, was going to reduce the overall contrast because all of the pixels were blurring into at the edges. So, point is, modern pixel art has found a sort of halfway point, this bridge, where the overwhelming majority of people are not going to see the pixel art on a blurry TV or CRT monitor anymore. Pixel art is being made now for the medium that exists now, which is much sharper LCD, where every pixel is crystal clear. So because of that, now dithering is incredibly visible. It doesn't do the same job it does anymore.
Super sharp. Right.
So if you are designing a retro game, hardcore, you want it to be exactly the style it would have been back in the day, you've got a problem. Because even if you're doing that, 99% of the people that play your game are going to play it on an LCD monitor, and it's not going to look the way you intend it. Or in other words, if you're studying the style that pixel artists like this use dithering, they weren't seeing what you're seeing. You're copying a style that did not exist. Which actually, this is an art history, hoity-toity, artsy-fartsy history. The same thing happened to ancient Rome when they became highly influenced by ancient Greece. And they copied the architecture and the statues. We found out fairly recently that in ancient Greece, all those beautiful marble statues of people with incredibly accurate anatomy and stuff, they were brightly painted to look like skin tone and hair color and the robes. But even the Romans in the day didn't know that. By the time Rome conquered Greece and discovered this already ancient Roman architecture and statues, all of that paint had long since eroded away. And so,
didn't they do the same? To all the buildings and everything too.
The buildings
like everything
too.
was
Even
painted.
It was all
very
painted.
colorful. Yeah.
Yes. And there's one of my favorite expressions from art history, or just history in general, is captive Greece captured Rome, which is just a really cool expression. But anyway, the point is, Rome ended up copying a style that did not exist. So when they left the marble pure, they thought they were just building upon and amplifying what the ancient Greeks had already achieved. But the fact is, if that paint had not eroded by then, almost certainly the Romans would have been brightly painting all their architecture and statues too, which is fascinating. Talk about a parallel universe.
Right.
You know what I mean? But anyway, so the point is, keep that in mind, especially nowadays when overwhelmingly people are going to be seeing the pixels crystal clear. Dithering was done to smooth out gradients, to create the illusion of more shades of a color to get a smoother blend. Especially nowadays. It was true even then, but especially nowadays, remember, there are different ways to dither to create that gradient. And dithering does two things. It creates the illusion of a smoother blend, but it also adds texture. And the different styles of dithering are going to give you different textures, and that is critical when you're trying to render different surfaces. So if you're dithering a stone or the ground or tree bark, you're going to want to carefully choose the actual dither patterns you're using or the style of dithering you're using to actually not just give you that added sense of more color or value, but to actually give you a benefit in that texture instead of being a bad thing. So seeing this on LCD, this is actually a bad thing, this dithering up here. This is not how the artist intended. They wanted this to look like relatively smooth metallic cylinders. And now on a non-blurry LCD screen, it looks really grainy, like it's made out of cement or something really coarse. And so, but this is true even, they didn't give it as much thought back then because the blurriness kind of hid that problem for them. But on better TVs, bigger TVs, or just in general, visuals were better by artists that understood that there were different ways to dither and you should do the different style based on the surface. So as you can see, I used the horizontal line approach to create a smooth metallic variant to show how drastically differently you can approach the same problem and have clearly a sense of a different texture. One thing looks much more mechanical and smooth, and one thing looks much more like I said, like it's stone or concrete. And then I took that further with the gem here, which has dithering in it. Here, which obviously makes no sense for a gemstone. And then I just showed there's the flame exhaust here, which is fine. It's not like it's really dithered or anything. And it's nice that he actually used some horizontal lines to emphasize that sense of extreme thrust or motion of the exhaust. But I just showed an alternate way of doing it that creates that additional gradation effect, but has a sort of pluming flame smoke kind of effect to it. And then the last thing, I just felt compelled to point out how at a glance this player doesn't pop out that well. And part of that is just the fairly extreme contrast of that background. So I just quickly tinted this all to be more close to each other in hue, to fall back more, to really help that player sprite pop off of the background better.
If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.